Welcome into episode 2 of the newest episode of the Mountain East Conference newest podcast, MEC Roundup. I'm your host, Taylor Kennedy. You can follow me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7 for all the latest about this podcast. Follow all the social media pages from the Mountain East Conference. You can look us up on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, you name it. Probably not MySpace. I don't know. We'll have to talk about Kick maybe. I think for all the people, I think Isaiah, my first guest, he may know what Kick is. We'll ask him maybe. That was a little bit back in the pre-2010s. I don't think adults would know what that is, but I think the two of us would. but yeah, what we're gonna do is I've already let the cat out of the bag. We're gonna talk with two different people. One of them being Isaiah Sanders, who earned the MEC Player of the Week honors in men's basketball, and we'll also talk with Tianni Kelly, the University of Charleston women's head basketball coach, and we'll just talk about a lot of different stuff that we talked last week with Pat Robinson, and we're just going to dive in, go in a bunch of different avenues, and we're just going to see where it goes. So without further ado, let's introduce our first guest of this episode 2 of this podcast, Isaiah Sanders from Fairmont State. Isaiah, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Man, how you been? It's been a while. I talked to you a little bit last year, but how's everything
Mm.
been going for you, my man?
Everything's real well, just classes, basketball, family, just everything's real well. I'm having a good time.
Well, before we talk about hoops, let's talk about education because, a student athlete, the student comes first, then the athlete. But for people that don't know, what are you majoring in?
Business administration.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So what do you want to do with that?
We'll see. I have no clue. My dream is to be a basketball player, but let's see where that degree can take me to. So just gotta see with time.
Yeah, the dream's alive. Hey, as long as that dream is still alive, you just keep going forward.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Oh, man. Well, Isaiah, like I said, thanks for joining me. And I talked about how you earned the Player of the Week honors in the MEC. Just sort of
Mhm.
recap last week. What went well for you? Where did you see yourself grow? Just walk us through last week. 'Cause again, you had a great week. You helped Fairmont go to a 2-0 week. And just talk about that. What went well for you last week?
Well, I would say is I made a lot of good reads. Teams are starting to face guard me and trail me when I come off screens. The biggest thing that's just been emphasized to me through the coaches is just making the right reads. If they're overplaying me, things like back doors, coming off curls, maybe popping if they go under the screen. I think I'm a pretty dangerous player. I can score at all three levels. So I think that really worked well for me this past week.
Dude, I don't know if you knew this or not, but you averaged right around 28 points a game last week. You scored 26 against the Vulcans of Cal PA, and then you guys lined up. You lined up actually, scored 29 against the Senators of Davis and Elkins. Did you know that? Did you know that you scored 29 and 26?
Uh, well, when we were at Cal PA, they had like the score on the scoreboard, like how many points. But when I was at D&E, I thought I had like 15. I didn't even know I had that many until after the game.
Now I gotta ask, just from an overall personnel perspective, um, walk me through this. How do you go about improving each and every week? Because again, you just had 55 points combined last week in those two games, but now you're in the midst of conference season now. What goes well for you right now? What just sort of sparks up?
I would truthfully just say no in my game. I know what I do well, and I know what I don't do well. So the only obvious thing is just to build on the things you do well, while also like behind the scenes working on things that you might struggle with. But truthfully, I just be out there playing, try to get my hands on the ball, bring energy. That's really what I do, and my offense comes along with that when I play hard. So that's really what I go out there and try to do every night: just play hard, play my game, and everything else works out for itself.
Well, cool. So let's talk about this season so far. You guys are 4-0 to begin the season, but I want to start here because you guys had an exhibition game, your first, like the very first game of the season against Bowling Green. What was that like for you all playing a Division One team in Bowling Green? You guys lost by 2. What did you walk away learning from that game?
As an individual or as a team?
Either way, we can go, but we can go down both avenues.
Individually, it just told me that I have the ability to play at that kind of level with those kinds of guys. I'm just as good as anybody else, and that just tells you that at the D2 level, D3, D1, it doesn't matter. There's all players that can play at that level. So that really just told me that just gave me more confidence for the upcoming season that I could play with the top dogs at any level I can compete at. So as a team, I think we learned that we play together, we play harder than the other team, that we'll have a lot of success this season. So that's what I think as a team.
Let's talk about the team because you guys added a few new pieces, a few transfers, a few kids from the state of West Virginia that people within the Mountain State would know. But talk about these new guys. What are you seeing from them? And just give us a general theme about them.
Well, we got a couple graduate students. They're like veteran kind of players that really know about college basketball and what works well and what doesn't. So they have a leadership role in this team. The younger guys, we got a lot of new young guys too. They really improved throughout this fall. I would say they kind of surprised me how good they were. They can compete. They can compete with all of us. So practice is real competitive, things like that. So I think them young guys and our older guys, I think they're gonna have a big impact on our team this year.
Okay, so I find this fascinating. So let's stop right there. You mentioned how a few of these younger guys impressed you or even surprised you, as you just said. Who has been that guy, or maybe guys for that matter? Who have been just a couple of those names?
We got like freshmen like George Mangus, Jalen Johnson, Alex Yoakum, Zach Kimball, Adam Deininger. We got a couple young guys. I think are really good. All of them have had their time to shine. They still got a lot to learn, but I think all of them can play. Every single one of them, not just a few.
Okay, cool. So your game now. You had an exceptional year last year. You popped off in the MEC conference tournament, helping your team make it all the way to the conference championship game, defeating West Liberty as well. But looking back at next season, where did you see yourself grow the most?
Mentally, I would say. This summer, I would say the summer before last season, it was more like me working on my skills, working on my jumper, like things that I needed to work on, like to get me ready for the season. And as the results showed towards the end of the year, a big thing for me, I now know how to score. I know how to do certain things. I feel like this summer I was really focusing on more mental than my physical. Like when to score, when to make the right reads, when to go. Me and my trainer kind of watched a lot of film this summer and seen spots that I can get to and ways I can somewhat like manipulate the game, kind of cheat it a little bit. So this summer was more of a mental summer for me instead of like a physical, like going out there running sprints every single day. I still did that kind of stuff, but my focus really this summer was the mental aspect of the game, trying to learn more.
Did you see yourself continue to grow in that mental aspect as you just alluded to, or was there a different part of a part of your game that you continued to grow in the offseason leading into your senior campaign?
I would say the mental is the most I really worked on, but I worked on a lot creating my own shot because I know Dale wasn't going to be here to create my kind of shots that he did last year because he did a lot of teams focused on him and things like that. So that just made me more open, kick swings, things like that. I knew this year I was going to have a bigger role when it came to scoring and things like that because we lost an all-region player. But I did work on figuring out ways to create my own shot. Like I said, making the proper reads, coming off screens, things like that. And the results have really showed so far this past week. So I'm excited. I learn a lot every week, every game, how people are guarding me. So I'm excited.
Let's talk about a guy that you just mentioned, and that's Dale Bonner. We know about Dale Bonner. Dale Bonner is now with Division I defending national champion Baylor. But when you look at that loss, because you just mentioned a lot of teams, a lot of personnel was focusing in on him. But do you see yourself more as a vocal leader now that he's gone, or are you more of just same old Isaiah, just going out there, giving your best, regardless of the situation, regardless if you guys even still had Dale or not? How do you see that impacting your game?
Well, I'm the same player I was. I just have to step it up a little bit more every night. I bring that energy. I'm more vocal, I would say. You have to kind of do things a little differently now that I'm a senior. You kind of got to lead by example and try to do the right things. You can't come to practice going through the motions, things like that. Well, that aspect was a little different, like being more vocal. But when it comes to playing, I'm the same person I always have been.
Let's talk about your game. And for people that don't know, Isaiah's stats last year were just eye-popping, to say the least. You averaged 21 points a game last season, 44% from behind the arc, and you recorded double-digit performances of 22 of 20. In 22 of 30 games, and you were honored as an All-MEC first-team selection. So, describe your game for people that don't know. If they have not seen Isaiah Sanders play, what would you say best characterizes your game?
I would say, oh, I hear a lot of people say my game is smooth.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, smooth. I can make the proper reads. Like if people leave me open, I can shoot the jumper. I got the one dribble pull up mid range. I can drive to the basket with the best of them and finish strong, get a strong dunk. I would just say smooth or exciting, one of those two.
I would agree. I would agree because I've seen you play a few times, and I'm just like, man, that is smooth. You do make a
Yeah,
smooth read.
yeah, yeah.
All right, so cool. So a couple more, and I appreciate you joining me. But let's talk about a guy that you had mentioned earlier, and that's Zion. Zion Dobbs, Fairmont Senior's own. How do you two click so well together? Because you guys just seem like to feed off of one another. Just describe that relationship between you and Zion.
I just think it's funny because he's my roommate. I
Oh,
live with him off campus, so we have a good connection. You know, we hang out off court like every day because I live with him. So it kind of just translates on the floor. I know his strengths and his weaknesses. He knows my strengths and my weaknesses. So we kind of just try to feed off each other, things like that. We do a lot of talking too off the court, what's expected of us and what we need to do and what I expect out of him. And he says the same thing for me. So sometimes you gotta tell people things they don't want to hear. He does the same thing to me, you know.
now has Zion gotten you accustomed to some West Virginia things like the pepperoni roll, putting chili on a hot dog? Has he gotten you accustomed to that now?
He talks to me about it, and I see things he does, but some things I'm against. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not with everything.
Now hold on, timeout. It's like a 30-second timeout now. What is these things that you're just like, I'm staying away from?
Well, I would say big thing the pepperoni rolls. I know it's a sin. It's a sin in West Virginia, but I don't know. I haven't connected with him yet. I haven't connected with him yet.
Man, where are you going to get pepperoni rolls?
People bring them to us, things like that. I don't know. I just haven't been a big fan.
I
But
mean,
he has got me connected with the local restaurants and things like that. So I'm good with that. I'm good with those.
I think we're now going to have to turn this into a weekly update on Isaiah, whether or not he's finally fell in love with a pepperoni roll.
Next time we talk, I'll give you an update.
How about this? How about I bring you a pepperoni roll? I'm from West
Okay.
Virginia. I'll help you out. Okay? How does
Okay.
that sound?
Sounds good. I like that idea. I like that idea.
I mean, because dude, you're playing here in West Virginia. You're playing the Mountain East Conference. I mean, Mountain isn't even a part of it. You gotta be like, you'll be engraved in the West Virginia culture. I mean, do you not feel like you're a part of West Virginia without that? I mean, I would. I would if I wasn't from here. That's just me though.
That's hilarious. No, you gotta bring me one. You gotta bring me one.
All right, I
I'll-
will. Describe that relationship between you and Coach Koenig.
I think it's an interesting one. First of all, I'll say he was like the only coach in high school that gave me an offer. So I respect that a lot. I think about that a lot. I probably think about that every time we get ready to play because he was really the only person to believe in me enough to give me a scholarship to play at this level, which was always one of my dreams. So I feel like I owe it to him to go out there and do my job as best of my ability every day. We're both guys that like to have fun and enjoy each other's company and things like that. But he's definitely real hard on me, whether that's behind the scenes or in public. Mostly behind the scenes. People don't really see like him on me as much in a public setting, but he's definitely real hard on me. But it's tough love.
Does that help you get better each day? You just mentioned that tough love aspect of the relationship. I would figure that's the best part of that relationship because then you know that tough love will eventually lead to success for the both of you down the line. Am I correct when I say that?
Yeah. It just reminds me never to stay satisfied.
Okay.
Because he tells me when I'm doing well, but he also tells me when I can do better.
Hmm.
After the D&E game and during the game, I mean, I had that many points at the end of the day, but he just kept emphasizing to me that you need to play better, you need to do this, you need to do that. After the game, he just told me that wasn't even your best game, you're gonna get better, things like that. So just little things like that always push you to reach a higher level. Because I mean, yeah, we played well at D&E, but we didn't play as well as we thought we should have, especially me personally. So during the game, he let me know that, and I think it helped us as a team as well.
Well, a couple more, and I want to start here, and I want to go back to your individual game very briefly. When you look at your game, and now that you guys are 4 games in, 5 games in, if you count the exhibition game, but you're 4 games into your regular season, where do you want to see yourself make that next leap, just to continue the success that you're already on?
That's a hard question. I would say, truthfully, I just take things one day at a time. Just try to win the day. And I know from my past experience, if I just stay who I am, true to myself, don't get too high, get too low, then everything works out for me always at the end of the day. So I'm just gonna take things one day at a time, one week at a time, until we get to that March or even April if we're lucky enough time period.
Isaiah, I appreciate your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and I will definitely have to hold you up on my end for getting you a pepperoni roll, a true West Virginia pepperoni roll. Thank you,
That
Isaiah.
sounds good. That sounds good. Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. I appreciate you as well. That was Isaiah Sanders, and coming up next, we'll talk with Tianni Kelly as well about what's going on down in the capital city at the University of Charleston. You won't want to miss it here on MEC Roundup. We just spoke with Isaiah Sanders, the MEC Player of the Week, in our last interview. Now let's focus our attention to the women's side of the Mountain East Conference, and let's talk to Tianni Kelly, from the University of Charleston. Coach, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So how's everything been so far for you all?
So far, so good. We can't complain too much. 3-1. Lost a tough one to Cal PA, who I think will be very good in the PSAC, very good in the region, and getting ready to take on another extremely tough opponent with Glenville. So we're just trying to keep our head above water and keep the ball rolling.
A rematch of last year's conference tournament. How about that?
Yeah. Looking forward to it. It'll be exciting. It'll be intense. Glenville UC games are always they're always intense, always a good match. One of my best friends that I played with my sophomore year when I was here at Charleston sent me a box score of our game against Glenville her senior year, and it was just funny. It's always been a dogfight, so I'm looking forward to it.
So let's talk a little bit about your team. And you mentioned how you guys are 3-1 right now. But let's sort of put a general theme on that so far. When you look at these first 4 games, what is your immediate thought of this year's team?
First 4 games, we have a lot of potential that we need to develop into and grow into. There's a lot of good things. There's a lot of bright spots, a lot of great moments that make me think, okay, we'll be all right. And then there's a lot of them where I'm like, okay, it's going to be a long one. So there's definitely a lot of potential. We're not the same team we were last year. It's definitely a different team. But I think we still have the capability to be very good this year again. So looking forward to that.
For people that don't know, how different are you guys compared to last year's team?
Yeah, well, if anybody watched us last year, we had 2 monsters in Brooklyn Pennell and Erica Russell, and they were just extremely dominant, ball dominant. And this year we don't have necessarily that same type of dominance in maybe 2 players, as much as we have a lot of people that can contribute. And I think Markai McCormick, she can be kind of dominant sometimes when she's having a game. But from that post player, we just have 3 different types of post players that can kind of contribute and give different things. Like one's a very good defensive player, Maggie Stevenson, and then we've got another Sierra who's more of an all around. She's got some offense and some defense, and then Clarissa's a force on the block, very hard to guard down there. So it's just we're more looking at a bunch of people making up what 2 people gave us last year.
Stay with McCormick because she just recently earned this week's MEC Player of the Week honors for women's basketball. Where have you seen her grow the most this year?
I think she's starting to understand our system and understand the areas that she can be successful in, when she can look to attack and score, and when she's going to play within the offense. And I think that's the one thing I felt like her last 2 games, they were not forced. They very much came to her, especially this game against Concord. All of it I felt like was in the flow of our offense. And so I think she's starting to figure out, okay, this is where I can be successful offensively here. And then defensively, she's got to continue to work to get better, but she's doing a good job.
Okay, so let's talk about you. And when you look at this off season and through these first 4 games, how have you sort of seen yourself grow? I mean, last year you guys won the NBC conference tournament, but just for you, just sort of dissect yourself and just sort of examine yourself as well. Where have you seen yourself grow so far?
I think confidence, I think, has probably been the biggest thing, the biggest area of growth, and still need to continue to grow there as well. But last year it was just I was super hesitant on everything, even with the players or with games, just super hesitant, just like, oh, is this going to be a good decision, bad decision? And now it's kind of like, okay, I made a decision, and just whatever the outcome is the outcome. And so I think just the confidence in my own personal ability as a coach, but then also just trusting our girls. And I think that's an area that I'm growing in and need to continue growing with this group, is just trusting that they know what they're doing, that they've been prepared. So
You've played in the you've played in the MEC, and now you're a coach in the MEC, and you've coached at a high rate so far. Obviously, we've already mentioned last year, but just sort of talk about just playing in the MEC compared to coaching in the MEC. Is there differences? Is there similarities? Walk us through that.
There are differences just in terms of some of the personnel and the teams. Like, as a player, the coaching staffs have changed so much since I was a player. But in the same way, there's a lot of, like, Kyle Cooper was been at Wesleyan and has been at Wesleyan for a long time, even though he's the head coach now. He was an assistant when I played. Kenny Osborne's been there for forever. Charles has been in the league. He was at Glenville when I was a player, but he's been in the league. Even Kim, I played against Kim. So those are the similarities. A lot of us have been in the MEC, whether as an assistant or a player, or been here for a while. But the difference is just, I think there were, when I was playing, I felt like, and I could be wrong, I felt like there were a lot of teams that, like, on any given night, you're just gonna, like, it's a dogfight. And I feel like that now, but I think it was just more magnified when I was a player, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. That does, and that's interesting you brought that up, because you mentioned how a lot of these coaches that you played against that were on staffs prior to you becoming a head coach are now still on staff, and they either moved up or still where they're at. So I always like asking people that, just because you get different answers. I like that, so I appreciate that. But I gotta ask though, do you still occasionally put the shoes on and go up and down the court with your girls?
Yeah, I did a lot last year, just with numbers. This year I haven't really gotten into practice now. Well, when we do individual workouts or something, at the end of it, I'm like, all right, let's go one-on-one. And so I'll do that from time to time, but I haven't gotten into practice too much. So I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure it's coming at some point. There, I'm gonna, like, you know what? Let me just put my shoes on. It's better if I do it than let one of them do it. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, let me ask you this. Every time they see you lace up the shoes, are they just like, oh, great, Coach Kelly's got the shoes on. Now we're in for a long day?
No, they're usually like, oh, she's filling out the shoes. They're like, okay, we'll see what's going to happen. Like, it's usually skepticism. And then I get out there and they're like, oh, maybe I do need to play a little harder.
Oh, my goodness. That's funny. Okay. Well, let's go back to talking about this team. And you mentioned you're 3-1 on the season. And when you look at this team so far, what needs to happen for them to take that next step or that next leap for them to get back to where you were a season ago? Where do you see that improvement needs to happen?
And our leadership needs to improve, and consistency. And I think the two go hand in hand. We're in quarters. We're really good. Our first game against Mercyhurst, I think our first and third were pretty good. Against Cal PA, I think we had maybe one quarter, second quarter, or something. I can't remember which quarter, but like we had a quarter that was great, and the other quarters maybe were average. Against Concord, we had 2 great quarters in our first and third, and the second and fourth weren't very good. So just being more consistent, trying to put a complete game together. And then that leadership with on the floor, we're still struggling for somebody to emerge and be like, okay, this is my team, it's my show, we're running the show. And so until we get that solidified, I think we're going to kind of not necessarily struggle, but the games are going to be maybe harder than they need to be at times.
You mentioned consistency, and I feel like coaches have different answers to this, but since you are a player, now you are a coach, and you've seen how to build consistency as a player, but how do you go about building that as a coach?
I think it's for me, it's being consistent in what I'm harping on them about. Defense is one thing I'm constantly harping on them about. Talking is nothing, and constantly harping on them back. So if I'm consistent in what I'm vocalizing and what I'm saying, hey, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to do, then eventually, hopefully, the idea is that it'll set in their minds and their brains, like, hey, this is what we need to do, this is what we got to do. Last year, one of the biggest things for us was staying together, and through adversity and not falling apart. And I consistently, every game, I was like, stay together, stay together, stay together, stay together, in practice, stay together, stay together. And so when we got towards the end of the years and these tough stretches, like we're in Louisville game, we're down 12 in that championship game, and hey, stay together, we'll pull it out, we're fine, stay together. And I think at the end of the year, like they would ask the players, hey, what was one of the things that, well, we just stayed together the whole time, and like they didn't even know it when they're repeating or they're answering the question. But that was something that I've harped on from day one, is like, hey, you guys got to stay together, guys, stay together. So I think it's just being consistent on what you're harping on.
And then a few more, and let's start here. So when you look at this community of the University of Charleston and the fan base that you guys have had, obviously, again, I'm gonna bring back your player roots, but you saw it as a player and you're now seeing it as a coach. Describe the University of Charleston fan base.
I would say definitely loyal. The ones that have been, like when I was a player, a lot of them are still around. It's harder because a lot of our fan base was an older fan base, and so as time goes on, people go on. But for them, I think loyal is probably the best way to say it. And the one thing I will say is I think they're starting to come back. Like they're starting to get more involved. Since I've been back, I know last year was tough with COVID, but this year, people are reaching out, they're donating, they're getting involved, they're asking. So I definitely loyal, and I think they're trying to get more engaged.
And then lastly, when you look at where you want to see yourself grow throughout the rest of the year, you said consistency earlier, but I guess you could probably say consistency as well. But is there another part of your coaching arc that you want to grow on throughout the rest of the season other than consistency, or is that just a general theme for this year?
Man, that's a good question. Maybe consistency for sure. Confidence, continue. All of us, myself, our team, we need to continue to grow in that area. And I just I guess for the team's sake, the individual skill development is something that we want. By the end of the year, we want to look back and be like, okay, our 3-point percentage is better from at the end of the game or at the end of the year than it was the first 3 games of the year, if that makes sense. From a coaching standpoint, I guess I'm always trying to figure out ways to. I'm always trying to learn and grow, right? And for me, I think the one thing I'm trying to learn and grow, obviously X's and O's, I can never stop learning, but just culture and how to develop a consistent culture and a culture that I want within the day and age that we're in now. I think when I was a player, it was like, because I said so and you just kind of did it. And the kids today, they're not as receptive to that. They want to know why. They want to know how and a lot of different things. So trying to build a culture now is something that I'm just continuing to learn and grow in. It's year 2, and I know the culture takes time to establish, but that's an area that I want to grow in.
Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and don't go too hard on your players.
I'll try. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate it.
Have a good one.
You as well. That will conclude this episode of MEC Roundup 2. Again, I'm your host, Taylor Kennedy, and I give a special shout out to my 2 guests, Isaiah Sanders and Tianni Kelly from the University of Charleston. Just 2 tremendous guests, and you won't miss the rest of it here as we continue throughout the rest of the season. And again, you can follow me on Twitter at Taylor_Kennedy7 for all the latest updates. And always go look at our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, our website at mountaineast.org for all the latest updates regarding this podcast, news, player of the week honors, football, softball, all that stuff. You can find it there, and you will not want to miss the next episode as we talk with more players and coaches in the Mountain East Conference as well. Thank you all for listening, and stay safe.